Hello everyone. Welcome to the Ocean Sound Storytelling Channel. I am the storyteller. And today, I am so happy to be with you. You may be curled up under a blanket or listening with your ears on a soft pillow. Wherever you are, whatever the time, thank you for being here. Before we begin with an interesting story, please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel, so I know you enjoy relaxing moments like this. Where are you from? Send me a little hello in the comments. I would love to know which corner of the world you are listening from. Now, relax your body. Close your eyes and let the gentle waves take you into a gentle story, a little strange, a little mysterious, but warm enough to lull you to sleep all night long. So, are you ready? Tonight's story begins. Discarded skins. I remember finding the first one in my closet. I was grabbing a shirt, already late for work, when my hand brushed against it. Warm, rubbery, and yielding in a way that made my stomach churn. I yanked my hand back and stared at the thing draped across the hangers, a limp, hollow version of me, sagging, the husk of discarded scrap. Its face, my face, stared back, lips parted in a silent plea. The eyes were in empty, gelatinous voids. I stumbled backward, heart pounding. What the hell? My first thought was a prank. Maybe someone had broken in, made a grotesque model of me, and left it here. But no one had keys except me, and the precision was unnerving. The scar on my chin from a childhood fall, the crescent moon birthmark under my collarbone. It was all there, rendered in grotesque detail. I grabbed it by the shoulder and shook it loose. The whole thing collapsed into a heap on the floor, as weightless as air, but uncomfortably warm to the touch. The closet smelled faintly of salt and decay. I shoved it into a trash bag and tossed it in the dumpster before driving to work. The image of its slack jaw burned into my memory. By noon, I'd convinced myself it was some sort of vivid hallucination brought on by stress. Too much caffeine, too little sleep. But then another appeared. This one turned up under my bed. I was searching for my phone charger, and there it was, sprawled in the shadows as if it had been waiting. The hollow replica of myself, limp and sagging, carried a new, unsettling alteration. The left hand was missing 2 fingers. When I examined my own hand, my stomach lurched. My pinky and ring finger felt cold, numb, almost alien. I spent the rest of the night awake, pacing. The discarded skins weren't hallucinations. By the end of the week, I'd found 4 more. One in the passenger seat of my car, another hanging from the shower rod, dripping as if freshly peeled. Each time, they became less complete. The one on the couch had a gaping hole where the stomach should have been. The one in the garage? Its legs ended in frayed, uneven stumps. The air around them carried a faint static charge, buzzing against my skin. Each discovery left me more hollow, more off. My reflection in the mirror didn't feel right anymore. My movements lagged, mimicking a glitching video feed. And then there was the itching, deep beneath the skin, under muscles, along my spine. At night, I lay rigid in bed, clutching the sheets as my body writhed with an electric discomfort I couldn't scratch away. It came to a head when I decided to burn one. The 5th skin had appeared in my kitchen, slumped in front of the fridge as though it had crawled there to die. I dragged it into the backyard, my hands shaking, the trash bag hissing against the grass. The lighter fluid splashed across its surface, glistening with an oily sheen. I lit a match, my breath hitching as the flame licked the edge. The smell hit me first, a sharp, acrid reek that turned my stomach. Then came the pain. It began in my fingers and tore through my nerves, jagged and relentless as barbed wire. I dropped the match and crumpled to my knees, screaming. A creeping pressure surged beneath my skin, straining it to the point of tearing. The fire hissed and died, the skin untouched. My hands trembled as I ran my fingers along my own arm, and that's when I felt it. A seam, almost invisible, running along my wrist. I tugged at it instinctively, and a sliver of my own skin peeled back. Beneath it, I saw something. Not muscle, not bone. A gleaming dark mass, rippling with a life of its own. By morning, the itching became a torment. My flesh crawled with a million tiny, unseen legs, gnawing from the inside out. I refused to look in the mirror. The reflection had grown wrong in ways I couldn't articulate. Bloated, pale, stretched over bones that no longer seemed mine. My skin hung loose and clammy, as if it had been boiled and left to cool. The newest, discarded skin sprawled across my bed, twisted and lifeless, a corpse dissected and abandoned. Its lips twisted into a leer that mocked every natural expression I'd ever made, teeth crooked and too large for its face. The jaw sagged open, dripping a viscous fluid onto my sheets, the stench acrid and metallic. Its hollow sockets bored into me, accusing, demanding. I couldn't bear it. Something inside snapped. I slammed the door, dragged the blinds down until the room was a darkened tomb, and staggered to the kitchen. My hands found the knife before my mind caught up. The cold steel trembled in my grip as I returned to the mirror, heart hammering. The reflection stared back, and I almost didn't recognize it. The eyes were sunken pits. My lips, cracked and scabbed, quivered against yellowed teeth. My skin, gray, translucent, and slick with sweat, clung to my frame, taut and unnatural, as if it might split at any moment. My fingers shook as I dragged the blade to the seam on my forearm, the line that had appeared days ago, mocking me with its symmetry. I pressed and sliced. Pain erupted, white-hot and electric, but it wasn't what I expected. The sensation burrowed deep, raw and satisfying, scratching an itch buried beneath the skin. The blade slid through the flesh, parting it in a jagged, bloodless line. The skin didn't bleed. It peeled, curling back in thick, mucus-slick layers that made my stomach churn. Beneath it, something pulsed, a living, glistening black mass. The surface shimmered as if oiled, twitching in time with a heartbeat that wasn't mine. It smelled of iron and something sharper, something alive. Breathing heavily, I dug my fingers under the edges of the peeling flesh and pulled. The old skin came away in long, rubbery sheets, each strip making a wet slap as it hit the floor. My jaw clenched against the growing agony, but I couldn't stop. My muscles burned. My vision swam, but I ripped and tore until the ground was littered with fragments of my former self. When I straightened, the thing in the mirror took my breath away. It stood tall, its surface an obsidian ripple of sleek muscle and unearthly symmetry. Tendrils of faint light coursed beneath its surface, illuminating veins that pulsed with a rhythm that felt powerful, infinite. Its eyes glowed faintly, their intensity alien but familiar. They stared back at me, not with fear, but with hunger. The itching was gone. The weight, the sickness, the exhaustion, all gone. What replaced it was sharper, stronger, undeniable. I flexed my fingers, now black and fluid, watching them ripple and contract. Beautiful living shadows. The old skin on the floor quivered, lifeless and grotesque, a shed chrysalis. These weren't warnings. They weren't signs of decay or disease. They were preparations. I hadn't been dying. I'd been transforming. The knife dangled in my hand, forgotten, as I gazed down at the heap of who I'd been. My lips curled into a smile, sharper and wider than it had ever been before. I turned away from the old me, opened the door, and stepped out into the waiting night. Oil and water. The scrutiny of the gallery guard weighed on Spencer like a wet dressing gown. He'd felt watched since he pushed through the heavy doors into the guard's peacefully unvisited room. Spencer was tired from his unplanned journey and thought that the gallery of the unfamiliar town might offer sanctuary, a place where he could clear his head sufficiently to be able to plan his next move. He had ignored the guard who lingered near a door-sized slab of a painting on the right wall of the gallery. He had turned immediately to the left wall and had been standing silently in front of the first painting, hung there for a couple of minutes, trying to think. He just needed to think. The painting was of a young artist sketching a large pig's head. The pig was dead in the profound way reserved for decapitated things, objectified by the disconnection, but somehow more of a head than ever in the absence of a body. The head suggested a hierarchy of death. Even a dead thing could be less dead than a pig with no head, or a head with no pig. Staring, Spencer became aware of the feeble beating of his heart. He needed to clear his head. Death was death, whatever the bristly head said. There were no less dead things. He was alive and still wanted to choose his own future. Still could, if he could only think of what to do. Conscious of the weight of his own tired meat, he shuffled away from the pig. Spencer's eyes scanned ahead of him as he crept along the left wall of the gallery, following the low metal barrier wire that kept visitors and paintings at arm's length. He sensed the guard watching him from his post next to a large, dark canvas on the right wall. He did not stop next to a huge oil of a group of idealized 19th century peasants. The most prominent figure, a rosy-cheeked girl, her delicate bare feet romantically invulnerable to the field's brutal stubble, was staring at him, as was the stern overseer who supervised the girl and her gleaning rabble. The eyes of the overseer and the gallery guard held Spencer in a pincer of disapproval. He kept walking and found relief in front of a benignly curving river, rolling past a grassed bank under skies of early autumn gray. Eyes were still on Spencer, glaring from their place on the right wall, cutting through his back like a barber surgeon. Spencer breathed, filling his pressured lungs, and held his ground in front of the painting of nothing. There were other footsteps in the gallery now, another body to share the guard's gaze and allow Spencer the space to think. The gleaming girl was not her. It didn't even look like her, except for the delicate bare feet the last thing he'd seen as he left the bathroom. Bath softened and steaming, wet in the air. Her feet could never have survived the rough field. Footsteps moved around him now, softened by gallery etiquette. Spencer ignored them, choosing to see nobody in the hope that he would remain unseen. He focused on the painting. The river would wash the thoughts of her away. He could sweep away into the distance on its soft curve. But the future that the river flowed towards was empty. It mirrored the gray sky and carried the reflection of nothing to nowhere. Spencer couldn't let the water take him there. He moved on, feeling that the stare from the direction of the large, dark portrait was being unfairly reserved for him, despite the presence of another moving around the space with him now. Spencer had driven when he should have been sleeping. He had imagined that he would find peace in the distance that he'd put between himself and the bathroom. But all he had done was stretch his fear over a greater space and carry it with him to a new town. His air-dried shirt stank, and his rheumy eyes watched his tired feet trudge over the parquet, avoiding the ceaseless gaze of the guard. The next painting looked much more like her than the gleaning girl had. This young girl was sleeping. The soft pink arm curling around creased, plump pillows was hers. The arm belonged to the feet, steaming and pinkly clean, sticking up out of the water, hanging over the edge of the bath. This was a portrait of the arm that had once encircled him at the house of a mutual friend and made the deal between them. The small hand had settled on his back and told him the lie that she would never leave. After the clumsy, self-taught chess of their early relationship, they had moved into a flat together and settled into a domestic stalemate. Their dreamt future rapidly revealed itself to be unwinnable. His career prematurely lost with the part of him that he sacrificed to the medication. She became his whole, unlosable life. If he could continue at all, then it could only be with her. She could never leave him, and he could never leave her. Spencer stared at the sleeping girl in the painting. Her short brown hair was still neat. Her sleep could only have been the briefest of naps. It was not the knotted mop that had once smothered the pillow next to his, the sun-catching nest for her late sleeping head. And neither was it the weightless weed that had billowed and writhed under the bath's hot water. The smooth, pink arm hadn't been strong enough to free the hair from the splash and suck of the water. But when the struggle was over, and the only movement was the curl of steam over the ripples cast by a single tear, the peace in her face was the same as that of the painting's sleeping girl. Spencer had given her peace and left none for himself. She could never leave him now. Spencer felt the guard's stare on his back. The footsteps of the other visitor were gone, and he bore the stair alone. The guard was staring with her eyes, bath poached and unblinking. They steamed into Spencer, seeing his past and keeping him tied to the present of the gallery. The guard knew. The paintings knew. Spencer turned quickly, forced to move by the suspicion of the guard and the watching walls. The guard was not there. There was nobody there. The wet footprints of some rain-chased visitor crossed the polished floor between him and the tall, dark portrait on the opposite wall. He followed the watery tracks towards the painting. He walked, transfixed, until his shins pulled the low barrier wire bowstring tight. And then he leant in further, creasing at the waist. His eyes dragged to the canvas. He looked at his own face, staring back at him. The last time he had looked at himself, he had seen a steam-softened reflection quivering over the rock pool of a slack mouth. Now he saw a perfect mirror image of himself, no less immaculate in its likeness for being scraped in thick oils. The red eyes were one slow blink away from the terror of sleep. Spencer's painted brow was creased in the frown that the image forced him to wear, but the shirt in the canvas still dripped with the splashes of struggle, and the hands, which hung limply at his sides, were pink and steaming. In the background, a bath, a murmuration of flicked brush strokes, showing the same gossamer steam rising from it that wreathed the pink hands. It was a masterpiece. Spencer was mesmerized. Footsteps came and went, clicking and squeaking around Spencer, indifferent to his fixation. His lower back burned as he leant into the painting. He felt glances of concern slip over him and then vanish as visitors moved on and abandoned the petrified man. Spencer needed to move on too. He needed to look away from the pleading red eyes to continue his escape, but he could not. The barrier wire cut into his fleshless shins, and pain climbed up his legs to burn at the base of his craning spine. His mouth dried as his unblinking eyes gummed and seeped. After an unknown length of time, when Spencer saw the steam in the painting begin to curl and climb, creeping out of the frame, the lights went out. The darkness moved in the steam and rolled unseen towards Spencer. He felt its hot caress, and then the vapor settling and condensing in his raw throat. A hand, dripping, warm and small, found the base of his burning spine and pushed with an irresistible strength. Spencer surged forward into the blackness, back to the bathroom he had never escaped. If she could never leave him, then he would never leave her. The next morning, the gallery guard flicked a row of switches, triggering a staccato dawn, which bounced the rarely visited room rapidly in and out existence before it settled into the new day. As the guard took up his position, he noticed that wet footprints still marked the unmopped floor in front of the large, bleak painting of the man with rolled-up sleeves and the pallor of an unripe strawberry. Behind the man, glinting eyes peeked through a tangle of wet hair. Over the edge of a steaming bath, sails pitch, Molly pushed open the door of the conference room. It was a loud, heavy, metal one that left her fingers smelling of dust. She brushed them on her colorful leggings. The conference room wasn't well lit, but it was in a cheap motel on the side of the highway, so Molly hadn't expected much. It smelled of stale coffee and sugary pastries that were piled like faux gold on the table pressed against one wall. Sadie turned and smiled at her. The women embraced each other. "Thanks for coming out, beautiful," exclaimed Sadie. Molly nodded back, her eyebrows slightly raised at the memory of her husband, asking why she was bothering to come at all. She had explained that Sadie did help them move in, and she was always inviting her to things. But Molly always declined, and it was just preposterous. And the kids had sleepovers, so they were occupied and he had stopped listening. "I was happy to," said Molly. She released Sadie from her hug, but found that she held on. Awkwardly, Molly attempted to rewrap her arms around Sadie's long, thin body. That girl just never seemed to gain any weight. Sadie chuckled a bit and gestured at the pastries and coffee. "Coffee at 9 p.m., Sadie?" teased Molly. "I thought people liked coffee," protested Sadie. "We do. It's just a bit late, don't you think?" said Molly as she approached the table. "Sadie? Don't you think?" She repeated her question. "Sadie?" Molly spun around, but found her friend had walked off to the computer. She shrugged and snagged herself a cup, but the burnt smell put her off a bit. She grabbed a cherry Danish and a napkin before taking a seat on one of the black plastic chairs. "Oh," exclaimed Sadie. "Oh, sweetie, could you please sit in that chair?" She indicated the chair on the end of the row at the right-hand side, instead of in the middle, where she could clearly see the presentation. "Sorry, babe. It's just, more gals are coming, so..." She let her O drag out uncomfortably and pursed her lips, and then smiled at Molly, who was scrambling with her pastry and purse. "Who else is coming?" asked Molly. Sadie spun on her heel. "What? Who else is coming?" repeated Molly as she settled into her new chair. "Oh, some gals from the book club, I hope, and some friends of mine." Her words trailed off. Molly began throwing her hair into a bun, an old habit she had when she got nervous. She tried to be polite and asked, "Do I know any of these friends?" "No, doll, but you'll love 'em, I promise," said Sadie as she marched over to Molly. "God, I do love that dress with those leggings," Just so cute. Perfect for fall, she added, pointing with a polished red nail at the brightly covered leaves that dotted her friend's legs. Sadie grabbed a napkin. She dusted off the chair Molly was just in. Molly, for her part, opened up her mouth to protest that she wasn't dirty when another guest burst through the door. It was quite clear to Molly that Sadie knew this girl better than her because they squealed at the exact same decibel. Molly overheard Sadie mention something about work. At that word, Molly frowned. She remembered work. She remembered lunch with friends, gossip in the break room, and feeling like she was actually contributing to something. Of course, that was all before motherhood. Molly rolled her eyes to keep from crying and raised her pastry to her lips. A few tantalizing flakes fell off, but when she went to bite down, she found the treat rock hard. Disgusted, she removed it from her eyeline and wrapped it up in the napkin. She sniffed her coffee warily, but found a similar level of grossness at the sight of shiny oil circles catching in the light flickering above her head. Molly sighed, longing for her warm bed and beloved husband's soft protests at random news articles that flashed by on the silent TV. She noted Sadie's new friend was permitted to sit in the middle and that the woman didn't take a single snack or cup of tar. But hey, it wasn't like she was missing out. She was rail thin, just like Sadie. Perhaps she was part of the same spin class. A calendar without extracurricular for the kids certainly has more time. Molly sighed. A few more women entered. They came in pairs, like on Noah's Ark. 2 women in all black dresses. 2 women in bright leggings that sent a bolt of envy up Molly's spine. 2 women in fur coats who didn't greet Sadie, but joined the first woman with bright red hair in the middle. Sadie kept looking at the door and checking her watch. At exactly 9:15, Sadie flicked the lights off and wobbled to the front in her high heels. The presentation had started. "Welcome, beautiful souls," flashed up on the screen. The words were decorated with pretty pink sparkles and brightly lit up the room. "Thank you for joining me so late tonight, my darlings. But as you know, I didn't want a single excuse about work running late." She clapped her hands together, and it echoed around the room. The side chatter stopped. "I want to talk to you about an exciting opportunity that has just changed my life for the better," began Sadie. She looked like a creepy ghost behind the bright light of the presentation. Molly suddenly felt very cold. "Before I get into the nitty-gritty details, I want to share all of the perks that this lifestyle has given me," said Sadie. She flashed the next screen, where bullet points began to zoom into focus as she read them out. "It has given me eternal youth, a low-calorie diet, which is totally customizable, incredible investment opportunities, and lifelong friendships." Suddenly, the door burst open. In walked two women, clearly late to the party. But Molly was relieved because their hair was in messy ponytails. They looked around the room and mumbled apologies. She thought she noticed a fruit pouch from the same brand she purchased sticking out of one woman's person. Sadie directed them to the chairs next to Molly, with a sour look on her face. Molly eagerly made room for the women. Sadie cleared her throat. Now that all of our guests have managed to arrive, she paused for dramatic effect, her gaze barreling down at Molly's row. We can continue the presentation. Molly's eyebrows furrowed with concern as she heard the words of her husband echoing back at her that this whole night was a bad idea because she didn't even know these women. But she missed the community of her old city. They had picnics in the park with the kids, a carpool schedule, neighborhood block parties. Of course, that was before it all fell apart. How can you get these opportunities and more, you may ask? Sadie's bright voice brought Molly back to the present, but got real screechy at the end of that question. Molly felt a cold shiver run down her back. It starts with me. My name is Sadie Malone. Sadie clicked the next slide, and a beautiful professional photo of Sadie in a power suit beneath a weeping willow appeared. And I have been involved with this group for, well, Sadie let out a giggle. Centuries. She flashed a winning smile and clicked to the next slide, which showed an edge of an acrylic painting of her flashed on screen. She was dressed in a medieval gown. The artist had captured the beauty of the very same tree from the previous slide, only smaller. Sadie seemed the same exact age. Her skin was less smooth, but the artist still captured it, creamy color against the backdrop of the rushing river. Molly listened for the sound of bird chirping, insects as they flew past her ear. It was as if she traveled back in time. The piece felt familiar, and she placed it as one she had seen during a visit to the art museum. A sense of dread began to fill her. Yep, that's me. Can you believe it? She asked. Sadie seemed to grow taller as she leaned into the audience. It's like I haven't aged a day, and neither will you if you choose to join our 3-step program. Her voice seemed to echo in Molly's ears. She felt herself growing tired and colder with each passing second. She readjusted her position in the chair and pinched herself to stay awake. The next slide showed a photo of Sadie embracing a woman in a side hug. This is BB, said Sadie. She looks kinda sad, doesn't she? Sadie's clicker turned into a single red laser dot, which darted over the woman's frumpy dress, unappealing limp hair, and sad teeth. Well, after 1 month with me, she went from this, Sadie clicked to the next slide, to this. Before them was a bright photo of a drop-dead gorgeous model who Molly swore she recognized from a red carpet or two. She wore a long, red ball gown. Her hair was curled into beautiful waves, and her smile was now white as bone. Now, I will warn you, ladies, that if you don't follow every step of this program, deadly consequences await you. Sadie's voice seemed to drop an octave, and the image of Bibi faded. Molly felt Sadie's icy blue eyes lasering into her. It felt like everyone left the room except the two of them. She felt safe and warm in her friend's gaze. The cold of the conference room had melted away, giving into the promise of eternal youth. I can't sleep, can't give in, mumbled Molly under her breath. If I sleep, I'll die, she continued, and gripped the cheap plastic chair with all her might. But I know you gorgeous, gorgeous gals aren't dumb enough to not listen to me, right? Exclaimed Sadie. The spell was broken. Bibi was back to being bright, as was Sadie's tone. Now for the nitty-gritty, darlings. And I want you to know I'm only sharing this opportunity with you because I just feel so close to all of you, she said, as she clutched her hands into a fist around her heart. There were soft murmurings of agreement. The first step to this whole thing is to let me bite you. Sadie's voice had a tinge of glee at the very end. No, seriously, ladies, I'm not joking. I summoned you because I just think y'all will make the very best vampires in the whole gosh dang world. Because when I bite you, you pledge your undying loyalty and servitude to me, your BFF. And after that, you can host vampire parties of your very own. So you, too, can create your own vampire communities. Isn't that great? Then she used that icy gaze again. The world faded around Molly, and she was left in the embrace of her friend's warm spell as she said, "Just remember, you'll always be a part of mine, and loyalty to me always comes first. Best friends for life." Molly sat stunned in her chair. Her heartbeat pounded like in the movies. Sweat formed on her neck and dripped down her body. She felt like a child who had put too many blankets on the bed too early in the fall. It was just so hot. And Sadie had the solution. Sadie could cool her down. Sadie could fix her. She blinked her heavy eyelids a few times. Her face was fully relaxed. Subconsciously, her hand drifted to her neck. She felt it drift up her face, pull back, and slap her cheek as hard as it could. It was a technique her father had taught her as part of her driving lessons. Suddenly, as the room came back into view, something inside her screamed at her to run, grab her purse, and run. But it was like her legs couldn't or wouldn't move. Instead, she found herself staring at the presentation before her. Like zombies, the women beside her began to stand and join the line in front of Sadie. It was a horrible, perverse version of communion. Desperately, Molly looked around for the exit, but the darkness around her made it quite the challenge. She reached down for her purse, coffee, and pastry. Slowly, she stood up, suddenly thankful Sadie had forced her into the aisle seat. Molly was careful not to turn her back and was slightly transfixed at the sight of Sadie pulling the women in closer around herself. She seemed to be whispering soft words as she stroked one woman's long, red hair. Molly inched past the final row of chairs, careful to have it between her and the group of hypnotized victims. She used one hand to feel behind her, looking for the edge of the pastry table, but she backed in too quickly, and the table hit the wall. All eyes turned to Molly. "Ah!" screamed Molly. She decided at that moment to turn her back and look for the door. She sensed that the mob had turned and began to stumble over the chairs, reaching for her, grabbing at her. Their arms and hands were like vines. Molly searched her memory desperately as she replayed the night. She had moved chairs. She had been at the center. She had gotten a pastry and coffee. But which one had been closer to the door? Sadie's voice rang high above the moans of her servants. "Molly, Molly, come back, Molly. Please, won't you be the best vampire babe in the world? The coffee." The coffee had been closest to the door, so Molly turned herself around again and was face to face with the girl with red hair. Her eyes were glazed over. Her mouth hung open, and she was blocking Molly's path. As the other women began to draw closer to them, Molly scrambled with what to do. She felt a bit of coffee slosh over her hand, so she threw that in the girl's face. When she remained unfazed, Molly threw her pastry at the woman. This seemed to stun her, so she grabbed more pastries. Each one hit like the rocks they were. And slowly, the stranger stumbled back. Molly bolted to the coffee, but was greeted by the pair of women in black dresses. They smiled at her, holding their hands out like friends. Their fangs glistened despite the lack of light. Molly smiled sweetly back, just so she could open the top of the silver carafe and push the coffee over. The women wailed in agony as burning hot coffee poured out. Molly found her door and pushed with all her might into an empty hotel hallway. She ran past the bewildered guests and the bored concierge. She considered telling them to call the cops, but knew from experience no one would believe her anyway. The burst of cold night air filled Molly with adrenaline. She pushed the alarm button on her car and ran to it. In the safety of her vehicle, she locked all the doors. She let out a guttural sob. "I just want friends," she wailed into the night. After a few moments, instinct kicked in and threw the car in reverse to get her home. James was asleep when Molly returned. She was shocked to find it was after midnight. She double, triple checked all the lights were on, and the doors were locked. So were the windows. As she approached the bed, she reached beneath her husband's pillow and wrapped cold fingers on the wooden stake. Then, her excuses. Ted body wrapped itself in the warmth of her husband and attempted to fall asleep to the rhythmic sound of his beating heart. Morning came and went. The work week came and went. By the following Saturday, the nightmares of the last week felt like a scary dream. Of course, that's when the letter came. It didn't come by postman or dropped off at work. It was nailed to Molly's front door one night when she got home from work. The letter's envelope wasn't like the normal white one you find at the office. The paper was rough and slightly yellowed, like when her son, Jake, had a school project, so they soaked paper in coffee to make it look old. And when Molly flipped it to the front, it bore a pretty, pink, sparkly seal with the letter S on it. Her husband told her, wait for him to open it. So after the kids went to bed, they sat up in theirs and slowly broke the seal. Inside was a sheet of paper which had Sadie's beautiful calligraphy that matched Molly's original invite to the conference. The message was short and sweet. I really think you should reconsider, babe, for your family's sake. Call me. S. Molly crumpled up the letter. You gotta admit, it's a new tactic. They usually just invite us over for a BBQ and a few cheap beers, James said with a laugh. Then, realizing his wife wasn't laughing with him, he added, guess it's time to move again. Molly remained quiet. A few tears gathered in her eyes. James once again tried to lighten the mood. You think one of them would figure out I'm a descendant of the Van Helsings before inviting you over? Maybe that's why they keep trying. Like some sick cat and mouse game, she replied, her voice trembling. Then, with a frown on her face, she added, I just wish I could find some real friends. He offered her a warm embrace, much more comforting than last night, as he whispered into her hair, someday you will, I promise. James was wise enough to let her pull away. She marched into James's home office. He couldn't see her eyes, and turned on the shredder. It roared to life, grinding the letter into tiny pieces of confetti, drawing a blank. I am freaking out. How can I explain this? I'm in a full-blown, it's a wonderful life scenario here, but in reverse. I'm not seeing what the world would look like if I had never been born. I'm seeing the world where I was born. But the joke's on me. You know, like when a guy walks up to you and addresses you by name, and you've got no idea who he is. Now, you're damned if you do, and damned if you don't, right? Say, who are you again? And you've offended the guy. greet him like an old buddy, and he's going to expect you to comment on your shared past. I mean, clearly, you've met him before, and he remembers that meeting. He knows who you are, but you don't know him from Adam. Now, let's take that lovely little conundrum and grow that to the size of a galaxy. And maybe you'll begin to get an idea of what I'm dealing with here. For me, it's everyone and everything. My mind has completely drawn a blank. Taking inventory. I'm in the student center. This is the College of New Jersey. It doesn't look familiar, but there's a sign by the bookstore that gives away the setting. There's an Introduction to Psychology textbook in my hands. A flat screen with a list of rooms for final exams is on the brick wall by the bookstore. So, it is exam season. I have a psychology class, and it's freezing outside. I'm wearing a full-length peacoat, a black one, with those big buttons, lapels, and an extended collar, indicating it is December. I'm a man in my early 20s, judging by the reflection staring back at me from the window of the bookstore. And I'm well put together, if I do say so myself. Harry, did you bone up on Professor Panarella's legendary hypotheticals? A voice behind me says. So, judging by this, I'm Harry. Whoever the hell that is. Turning, I see a prim, bleary-eyed blonde with blue eyes, bangs, and a sorority sweatshirt, clutching a large metal coffee travel tumbler to her chest. The sweater has the name Penny written on it in block letters, so I'm guessing she's Penny. I'm kind of at a loss, to be honest, I say. Shit, Harry. Again? I know you are kind of a prodigy, but this is Panarella we're talking about. He's got a reputation for failing students who are unprepared. You can't just wing this one. Well, this is confidence inspiring. Where do ideas come from? Where do memories reside? Where does your mind go when it wanders? Where would one go to track it down again? These are not matters of metaphysical concern. These are life and death issues. I mean, I'm royally screwed here. Penny provides me with a clue. I mean, out of everyone, I'd think you'd be ready for the exam. And why is that, Penny? I ask, really wanting to know. Because you are his research assistant, silly, she says with a giggle. Now, I'm wondering what kind of relationship I have with this world. She's giggling, twirling her hair, giving me a familiar look. There might be something going on between us. I'll come back to that. There are more immediate concerns. Oh, what research would that be? I say, with a playful affect, as if hunting for praise. Oh, you know, workaday stuff. Expanding on the theories of William James, the very father of psychology. Taking up the baton and puzzling out the mysteries of perception. Just real-world proof of the tenuous link between conscious awareness and behavior. The research study the two of you published, providing empirical evidence that conscious awareness or attention is absent nearly half the time, giving sway to automatic processing. And attention only comes into the picture when sleepwalking through common behaviors becomes too challenging. Wow, this girl has got it bad. She has like a dossier of my accomplishments. Huh? I say, for lack of a more appropriate grunt to express the tangled ball of emotions that her little speech has brought to the surface. But she has me thinking, by her math, I'm literally the most consciously aware person on the planet, since automatic processing isn't going to do shit for you if you don't even know who you are. I attempt to draw her out with aplomb, asking, which study was that again? The driving study, where you guys put sensors on people's heads while driving and determined that their attention was completely absent, gone, their minds wandering, only being called back when something unexpected happened on the road that required their full attention. Zobone, you're saying that attention is a spectrum, that our minds are here and there, wandering off in space, then returning only when needed? I ask. Well, that was your thesis, she said, chewing on a Bic pen. You feeling okay, Harry? She asks. Not remotely, I say. Can we sit down? Sure, honey. We've got a few hours before the exam, and Penny leads me into the Rathskeller, where I immediately order a beer. Budweiser? Big Mike asks. I call him that because it is on the name tag, not because I remember. Sure, I say, assuming he knows what I drink. Are you sure it's a good idea to drink right now? You've got an exam, Penny says. Under normal circumstances, I'd say no, but I need something. I don't feel well, I say. You look pale, she says. Your lips are blue, Harry. I hear an echo. Your lips are blue, Harry. Blue, Harry. Blue, Harry. I see her, bright blue. Yes, floating away from me. Her head inflating like a balloon. And this is when shit starts to get weird. The blood pounds in my ears. Breathe. My vision recedes, leaving me peering out at her through occluded fisheye lenses. The acidic cringe of bile rises in my throat. Just breathe. A cold sweat drenches my forehead. Deep breaths now, Harry. My shoulders writhe with spasms, and the back of my head burns like it is resting on a literal furnace. The shimmer of the sensation running along the temples to the front of my head. And somewhere inside, I know that I can't stop it. I have to let this play out. It is that feeling when something bad is happening, where you try to go somewhere else, distance yourself from it, float away, but you can't stop it. And then the fun begins. The rushing dizziness, like the feeling of sucking down helium. The whomp, whomp, whomp of the electricity sputtering out. the weakness of my arms, dangling like weightless feathers by my sides. Somehow, I know that this is a conditioned physiological response. I know that everything is okay, but I don't believe it for a second. I dive into a pool of cold water. Tendrils of icy cold envelope my raw skin, as if the clothes have been cut off of me, leaving me naked, every nerve singing. The rush of movement, though still perched on the stool. The loss of place and time. Remember to breathe. Feels like hands are firmly pressing down on my neck, choking out my life's breath. I gasp for air, only catching crumbs of a breath. From the corner of my eye, something materializes out of the wooden flooring of the Rathskeller. It is in the shadows of the stools. They lengthen and enlarge, running away toward the walls, and then snap back and pulse into 3 dimensions, and rise from the floor like cloaked assassins, their voices a droning electric hum, accented by mirthful screeches. 3 of them converge on me, slowly shuddering forth from the dust and jastin of the bar, shadows trailing behind their morbid forms like capes, malintentioned intruders from the realm of demons. Only I can see them. They are coming only for me. They are coming. They are coming quickly, almost upon me. I stumble backward, tipping over the stool, straddle my feet to break my fall, and crash to my backside. A violent flurry of sobs and wailing. My hands flail in front of me to keep them away as I kick my feet, one at a time, kicking myself back to the wall. I tuck in my knees and grip them in a desperate hug, screaming in terror as I wait for them to get me, which they do. It all goes black. Harry, 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 someone says. Slap. Ow, slap. Whoa! I shake my eyes open. It's a man, slapping me in the face. He's got a stubbly beard growing in, a round face with a protruding muzzle like a bear. I'd say he's either Italian or Polish. It's me, Professor Panarella. Are you back with us? He asks. How long was I out? I ask. About 15 minutes, he says, and I see Penny standing behind him, arms crossed, tapping a foot, looking very worried about me. Professor, there's a problem. I can't remember anything. Exactly. How'd you know? Penny told me, but it makes perfect sense. What? Why is that? Just lay back. Don't move. We've got to get you to the hospital. 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 Ha! Spit all. The world whomps and pulses, and my eyes close, and then I am back, sitting up in the hospital bed. Panarella is there. Penny is there, asleep in a chair, with her legs up on a table. The white curtain is drawn back. The hospital bed is perched up so that I am looking forward in a seated position. Panarella approaches me with a syringe and injects it into my arm. I put up my other hand to protest, but I am so drained of energy. I just go with it. "This is what you get for playing God, Harry," he says. "Who do you think you are, goddamn Jonas Salk?" Panarella asks. "Wait, are you saying that I did this to myself?" I ask. "Relevance, impartiality, welfare, and consent. Ethical canons of the research scientist. Remember those?" he asks. "Oddly, I think I do," I say. "But I haven't the faintest idea why. Do no harm. Ever heard of that? Least of all to yourself." "My God, Harry, what the fuck have you done this time? I was kind of hoping you would tell me." "Jesus, Harry. We were testing the serum on hamsters. We were nowhere near ready for human trials. Serum? Up-fattening serum. Harry. A bridge to oblivion. The zombie anesthetic. A drug to separate awareness from perception. It was a breakthrough. But who knows what goes on in the mind of a hamster? It barely has a sense of self. Its whole life is almost entirely automatic processing." "Whoa, Doc. Slow down. Help me out with this. Give me one of your famous hypotheticals, like Penny was telling me about." Okay. How do I explain this? You. What you call you is really a composite, a relationship, a master-servant relationship, like a dog and its master. The dog is your awareness, and what you call you, your perception, your selfhood, your experience of being you, is like the master. The thinking awareness, the automatic processing, is like the dog. I'm not sure I'm following you, Professor. I'm not talking to you right now. You are gone. All that is left is your awareness. The dog waiting at the door for its master to return. That's why you can't remember anything, because you aren't here. We don't know where you have gone or how to get you back. Then where am I ask. I have no fucking idea, Harry. We've only just started these experiments. But you decided to use yourself as a human guinea pig. Sounds serious, Doc, I said. You, as we understand it, is really a community of yous. There's your bodily self, your perspectival self, your volitional self, your narrative self, and your social self. Each a mix of awareness and perception, each a compound of master and servant. And your unified self has been pulled apart into pure awareness. Unless we can get you back. Tell me about the driving experiment. The driving study was an experiment where we studied the brains of people experiencing the feeling one gets that they don't remember the drive home. We proved it was real, Harry. They don't remember the drive home because they weren't there. It is the functional equivalent of sleepwalking. proceeding entirely through automatic processing, like a computer carrying out a program. So it's possible that jarring a person out of automatic processing is the trigger that brings their perception, the master, the you, back into the game. I don't know, Harry, Panarella said, sitting back in the chair next to Penny, rousing her. Penny yawned and wiped her eyes. Penny smiled at me and said, "You're back." She rushed over and gave me a wet kiss on the lips, saying, "You had us worried, babe." And then an idea struck. "Professor, is there a treadmill in this place?" A few minutes later, the neurologist hooked up electrodes to my head. I stepped up on the platform of the treadmill. "Are you ready, Professor?" I asked. "This is insane," he said. "Well, can't hurt to give it a shot. Now remember, I'm going to go on running at a steady pace. I'm going to listen to some music, and I'll be blindfolded. We're going to keep it going like that for 10 minutes or so. Then, without any warning, stop the treadmill. I'll have to deal with the sudden shift in velocity. I'll be pulled out of automatic processing. I'll have to come home, and the treadmill starts whirring. My sneakers are connecting to the mat of the treadmill, clicking along. A somnambulant, reflexive cadence. A steady drumming. The music in the headphones is at 150 BPM. I breathe rhythmically. I focus on my stride, the autonomous swinging of my arms, the automatic recoil of my hamstrings, the feeling of flying laterally. My mind wanders. Will I like my life with Penny? Will I be happy with the results of my research position with Panarella? Do I like myself? Why did I take the fattening serum? Was it a mistake? Was it on purpose? Was there some reason I wanted to free my consciousness from my present awareness? Had I discovered something about existence that terrified me? I heard a sound like braking car tires, the skidding of rubber on rubber. I felt the traction of the treadmill jolt me forward. My hands reached out. The blindfold was pulled off. My eyes scanned, reaching for the handholds. And in a whoosh, I came back to myself. Or was it? It was me. The master had come to the door. Only the dog wasn't wagging his tail and looking up and licking his face. The dog was barking ferociously, as if an intruder had entered the home. Penny said, "Is it you, babe?" Professor Panarella looked up hopefully. "Harry, are you back?" I looked at these strangers. I looked down at my young body, and I looked at my vitals on the screen of the monitor. How long had I been in a coma? Where was that useless body being kept in this hospital, I thought? And who was Harry? All I knew is I was free. Free at last. Harry can't come to the phone right now, I thought with a chuckle. "What's so funny?" Penny says. "Oh, nothing," I say. "You wouldn't understand. Feast. It's 2 a.m. Cassie's mournful dirge drifts up from the pantry. I lie in bed, staring at the moonlight through the open window, exhausted from the absence of sleep, pondering whether tonight is the night I start to set boundaries, feign ignorance to my daughter's call for attention, or go downstairs to take care of her needs, as I have done every night since she died. The illuminated hands of the clock read 2:30 a.m. by the time she falls silent. For a moment, hope offers me its hand. Has the torment finally ended? Is peace now mine? A drumbeat pounds in my ears. Nerves fire off insurgent tension, and 2:45 a.m. is the time I begin to believe she has quietened for the night. I close my eyes, breathe in, breathe out. Unfamiliar calm trickles in. At the point sleep beckons, a sudden thunder crash of rage shakes my bed, and I hear Cassie howl like a banshee. Hope withdrawn, I throw off the duvet, slide my feet into cold slippers, and head downstairs on a silent prayer for Cassie to be gone by the time I open the pantry door. But she's there, on top of the refrigerator, like a mound of meringue, all folds and as white as freshly fallen snow. The silver heart charm that dangled from her wrist in life still in place. Her shadowy eyes are red and swollen. Her pudgy hands reach out to grasp the air. "About time," she wails, a repeat of what she says to me every night. I sigh, rub my sore eyes. "Sorry, sweetie. I was trying to sleep. It's almost 3 a.m. You do realize that?" A flash of times past when Cassie, a toddler, would creep into my room in the early hours to tell me she had been calling out for help in the bathroom, and would I come with her right now because she really needed to go. Me chastising her as I chastise her now. I shrug. Then again, you're a spirit, so maybe you don't. A moan bubbles, bursts up from her insides. The pitch is ear-splitting. I am forced to cover my ears. "Do you realize how long I've been waiting?" she says. "Are you trying to starve me all over again?" She drags out the word, starve. It stokes my guilt, and in my exhaustion, I want to laugh hysterically. I open the fridge door, bury the sarcastic smile playing on my lips amidst the piles of food on the shelves. Cream-filled pastries, trifles, cooked sausages, and bacon. Chocolate muffins topped with swirly icing domes. A foodie's paradise. But the sight makes me balk. Food dominated Cassie's 19-year lifespan. Mine, too. I cannot believe it dominates her in death. What would you like, Cassie? There's lots to choose from. How about, before I can finish, her yelling bounces off the pantry walls. Anything. Just give me anything. I need to feed, and you're frittering away precious time, asking me what I'd like. I take out the plate of sausages. In those first few weeks, she showed up. I took the time to place them in a bread roll, slather on ketchup and mustard to make it look appealing. I don't bother with the presentation now. Instead, I throw them into her open mouth as if I'm feeding a ravenous, feral dog. She doesn't chew. I'm not sure ghosts have the ability, but gulps them down in an instant. I see them slip through her transparent, organ-free form. It's like watching a medical scan in real time. They leave her as they went in, whole, unchewed, undigested, splatting to the floor. I follow with the cakes and trifles. Watch my spirit daughter gorge only to cry for more. I take the dustpan and brush, sweep up the mess, pour it back into her, and this is the cycle, pending her being satiated enough to cease her demands. Once the cycle stops and Cassie is soothed, I'll clean up, throw it all in the bin. It'll be far too mushy by then to save. Besides, it soon stinks the place out. Then I'll sit a while, talk to her about anything and nothing until those shadowy eyes of hers close and she falls silent for the rest of the night. I share some blame for Cassie's current state and for how her life turned out. Weighing in at a hefty 13 pounds after a pregnancy sustained purely by chocolate bars, the only food my constantly nauseous stomach wouldn't eject. Cassie suckled the entire first night. Such was her voracious demands, until I was too sore for her to touch me. A bout of mastitis sealed the deal to move her onto bottle feeds. We'll see if she's meant to be this big, the health visitor said. You're only a small build, so maybe she'll slow down. Cassie did slow down, but I wasn't worried. Children grow at different paces. She possessed a healthy appetite, cleaning every morsel from her plate and more. An active child, she remained slim, but followed her centiles, a term used by health professionals. Listening to the mothers at the school gates, fraught with their fussy eaters, I admit to feeling smug. Then, one day, karma bit me for my arrogance. Cassie stopped eating. Her personality changed. She was having trouble with her friends, bullying, her teachers said. A phase, I thought. But after 6 months, it dawned that this was no phase. Something far more serious was at play. Cassie is 10 years old and weighs what a child half her age should weigh. How long has she been experiencing problems with food? The doctor gazed at me with sympathetic eyes as he spoke. I was grateful for it. It made a change from the critical glances I had become used to. I took Cassie's hand, gave it a reassuring squeeze. She pulled away, a fierce scowl that said, "You are a lying bitch," came my way. She had gone through the surgery door under false pretense, that of holiday vaccines, to go somewhere exotic. I had said it with my face set in stone, so she didn't suspect. I risked paying a heavy price for inventing such a whopper. But by then, I'd have done and said anything if it meant getting Cassie help. Since summer, so 6 or 7 months maybe, I replied. She didn't like the way she looked in her swimsuit, said her thighs were too wobbly to be on show. I thought it would pass, only it hasn't. It's getting worse. I've been called to collect her from school several times because she's fainted. She gets breathless at the slightest exertion. Her bones jut out. She's pale and sleeps a lot. I'm really worried about her. I wanted to say I feared she'd die, but to say it could make it happen, so I kept it to myself. There's a risk of lifelong health problems if she doesn't start gaining weight. The doctor looked to Cassie. Do you understand what is happening here, Cassie? You are very thin, and it's not good for you. Cassie stared at the floor, her arms crossed over her chest. The doctor sighed. Let's see what help we can get for you, shall we? We left the surgery. A prescription for supplementary feeds, iron pills, and vitamins stuffed in my pocket. A referral to child psychiatry on its way. Cassie sulked all the way home, shut herself away for several days without uttering a word to me. When she did finally show, her rage had stepped up a notch. How dare you tell the doctor that I don't eat, Mom? She yelled. It is my business, not yours and not his. She stood in the middle of the kitchen, arms flailing, her tinny ribs visible beneath one of the close-fitting tops she insisted on wearing to display what she saw as a model figure. Cassie's glare cut me. I felt like the devil reincarnated. You need help, sweetie. I've tried to do this on my own, but I'm lost now. I don't know what to do anymore. You're wasting away. I can't stand to see you like this. Then don't look at me. Hands on hips, head thrust forward. A wild glint in her eyes. Cassie, please don't. I only want to help. So shut up and leave me alone. She stomped off to her room. At the top of the stairs, she called out, and just so you know, I will not see a doctor ever again. The door at the bottom of the stairs opened. As Cassie paced towards the kitchen, I was quick to hide the bottle labeled sugar-free lemonade I had refilled with a sugar-loaded version inside the refrigerator. Cassie was 15 at the time, skeletal, walking miles every day and night. She appeared in the kitchen door, layered up in clothing, a scarf and woolly hat. Despite the heating being cranked so high, I could barely breathe. It's cold outside. They've forecast rain, too, I said. Why don't we watch a film? I've bought some of that toffee popcorn and hazelnut chocolate you've always liked. Gray rings circled her eyes. Angry red spots shone from her cheeks. Maybe later, she said, and turned to leave. Be back by 1. It's clinic today. Don't forget. The front door slammed behind her. Despite her lack of response, I knew Cassie would return home in time for her weekly appointment. She had signed an agreement with the medics, one I knew she would not default on. In exchange for doctors pausing her forced admission to hospital, she would eat a little more, show up at the clinic every Friday to be weighed, have her bloods checked. We drove to the clinic that afternoon, Cassie staring out of her side window, me humming along to the radio. The sun had broken through the clouds, turning a gray day beautiful. Inside the clinic, Cassie disappeared with the nurse, only to return several moments later. An ecstatic grin on the nurse's face. "She's put on a whole kilogram since last week," the nurse announced. A glimmer of light shone. I began to see faith in that pivotal moment. Yet my faith would soon be shattered. The next morning, as laundry tossed in the washing machine, I heard a knock-knock coming from inside. I found nothing obvious when I emptied the machine, but when checking through the clothing, I felt small, hard lumps in the hems of Cassie's trousers, in the lining of the jacket she had worn the day previous, childlike stitching on the inner side. I picked it open. Pebbles fell on the floor. "You should have put her in the psychiatric hospital when you had the chance. They'd have sorted her out. They're the professionals, not you." Having chided me throughout this challenging time, my mother's unwanted advice didn't come as a surprise. "Cassie doesn't want to be in hospital, Mom." And I couldn't bear to think of her being force-fed, and that's what would happen. It would be purgatory for her. I'm sure she'd do something drastic, so she dies either way. Choking back tears, my feet barely touched the floor as I left the house, car keys in hand. I sped off down the road, not knowing where I was headed. I didn't return home for another 3 months. I woke from the induced coma 3 weeks after the car accident. Extensive surgical repairs to my left leg, from thigh to ankle, meant weeks of rehab and learning to walk again. By the time I returned home, Cassie had a slight prominence to her tummy, a rounder face, but she seemed downbeat, soulless. "There, you see?" My mother proudly paraded a plumper Cassie before me. "This is what happens when you set boundaries for your children and don't allow them to control you." I took Cassie's hands. "You look amazing, sweetie. So pretty." We hugged. I felt the meat on her bones, the warmth of her. She forced a smile, although darkness sat in her eyes. For the remainder of my mother's stay, I watched Cassie shovel her grandmother's meals into her mouth, mindless, not seeming to taste or enjoy what was going in. She tried to throw it all back up again when I first arrived, didn't you, dear? But I put a stop to that too, my mother announced. Cassie nodded. She didn't look up, said nothing, kept on like a robot, loading her fork, filling her mouth, swallowing. I should have been happy she was eating. I wasn't. When I asked, neither Cassie nor my mother would elaborate on what went on between them during my absence. Cassie would shrug, remain tight-lipped. My mother would smile and say, "Proper parenting." Only at Cassie's wake, 4 years later, did my mother offer her pious explanation. I broke her. That's what happened. I removed everything she liked. Her music, the TV, those awful childish coloring books you insisted on buying for her. I locked her inside the house so she couldn't exercise. I put a spoon to her mouth every damn meal until she caved and started to eat. No food, no reward. When she fought against me, I slapped her every minute of every day for the entire 3 months, never out of my sight. That's all it took to get Cassie back again. It's what you should have done, but no, you had to give in to her again. Now look where she is. She turned to look at Cassie's photograph on the mantel. Then she was gone. You didn't like me when I was thin. You don't like me now I'm fat, do you? Cassie asks. I sit opposite Cassie's ghost on a chair I've dragged from the dining room. I haven't yet cleaned up the food mess from the floor. I stare into the myriad colors and textures. I've always loved you, Cassie. I worried about you when you were too thin. It didn't mean I disliked you. The saucepan flying through the air, the bolognese within it spraying across the kitchen cabinets, plates smashed against the floor tiles in my desperation to see her eat. Never have I revealed this to Cassie, but these were the times I disliked her the most. I used to think you were a useless mother. Misery and wrath cross Cassie's face like a hologram changes when it is turned. Do you still think that? I ask. You didn't understand me. You were afraid to. Cassie's eyes meet mine. I see the depth of her melancholy. An infinite, darkened pool. She is distant, forever out of reach, as she always was. Yet I failed to see it. Failed to see why a lump comes to my throat. I cannot swallow it down. I grab the dustpan and brush to clear away the debris from the floor. Next comes the mop, swishing back and forth until the dirty patch shines. Throughout, Cassie is silent, watching me work. Eventually, she breaks the peace. Do you miss me? I lean on the mop handle. I miss you dreadfully, Cassie. I just wish our time together had been different, happier, less of a fight, squeezing out the water from the mop. I wonder why Cassie's ghost did not return with the appearance she bore when she died. Emaciated, barely there. Was her ghostly bulk meant to taunt me? As if she reads my mind, she says, "You were only happy when I ate, when I was bigger." So she comes here looking like this because she thinks it's how I prefer to see her. I drop my head to hide the brimming tears. It doesn't make me happy to see you like this, to see you so sad. Not back then, and certainly not now. The tremble in my bones reverberates in my voice. Cassie judders. Her mountainous bulk ripples. Her face crumples as the wailing kicks in. The mop drops from my hand, and I move to take her in my arms stopping in my tracks when I realize I cannot touch her, cannot feel her. It's okay, sweetie. You don't have to do this. Believe me, I'd rather you rest. Her crying fades out like the end of a song. She becomes still. You don't wish to see me again? Her question is but a whisper. I would give anything to see you again. But not like this, and not if it causes you pain. For the first time since she started showing up here, I see her spirit smile. 5 a.m. The night after, and the dusky sky is littered with glistening dots. A chill seeps in through the open window. I shudder, get up to close the window, and with the click of its handle, my sleepy brain registers that I have not been stirred to the sound of Cassie's dirge. I listen for her cries. Nothing except silence fills the house. I should climb into bed, thankful for the peace. Instead, I creep downstairs, each step tentative, not wanting to rouse her or set off her wailing. The pantry door opens with a creak. I step inside. Cassie is gone, but for her heart charm bracelet lying on the top of the refrigerator. I pick up the bracelet, place it around my wrist, feel her presence against my skin. It tells me she will not return here, that her haunting is done. I take the stairs, crawl into my bed. Instantly, I fall asleep. Cassie's heart charm gripped between my fingertips. Over my dead body, I sit in the corner of the embalming room, watching as the mustached man drains the blood from my corpse. The corpse lies on a metal table, covered in a white tarp. And there is a faint choker of purple bruising and checkered abrasions around my neck. The blood in the tubes is purple-colored, with streaks of black. My irises are cloudy white films. My pupils are fading black, lifeless dots. As the mortician hooks me up to the embalming machine with its pump and wires, and the cold fluid enters the veins of my body, I feel nothing. I kind of shiver anyway, out of habit. This is skeevy as hell. Funny thing, I spent my whole life being afraid of death. Looks like I ripped that Band-Aid off. So, what am I doing here, in this musty, dimly lit room? What the hell happened? Obviously, there's some kind of life after death. Mystery solved. But sitting here now, watching my dead body, I've got questions. Lots of questions. Next in line, after those lovely aforementioned quagmires, is why in the hell is this dude singing to my corpse? Like, can you get any creepier? The mortician is singing, knocking on heaven's door as he embalms me. Am I in hell? Wow. Pitchy much. Not only that, but his voice is hoarse and raspy, like he is breathing through a lifetime of Marlboro Reds. I can actually see the emphysema in his lungs, seeing disease. I guess that's one of those lovely abilities one acquires after traveling through the valley of the shadow. And that's me, Amelia. And this is what my life has amounted to. A pale, bloated slab of festering lunch meat. Pathetic. I'm vaguely angry. I don't feel outraged and cheated or anything like that. Not looking to get back into that saggy meat sack. I'm ready to move on. It's more of a boiling bloodlust, an impulse to do harm, to set things right. Unfinished business. I want restitution. But for what? And against whom? There's no way I took the coward's way out. So how did I die? I try to remember, but the last thing I can recall is drinking IPAs and taking John O shots with Eddie at McGillen's old ale house on Drury Street, discussing the scoop I'd been working on. I walk into the casket showroom, which is directly across from the embalming room, and flip on the lights. Turns out, this is another one of my special abilities. The room has a gaudy chandelier, various shades of white on the walls, and trim, and cheap green inch-thin carpeting. By the wall is a dingy, moth-eaten couch and stacked plastic chairs. Things are set up for the wake that evening. There are several stands full of freshly delivered flowers, with notes attached, giving their condolences. A poster board with flattering photographs, many of which feature me and my sister, Sarah. A table with a guest book, and some assorted personal items. A dictaphone, a few articles I had framed, showcasing my work. A trophy from high school. Blah, 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 blah. I imagine the setting of my death, which I'm guessing was pegged as a suicide by the total lack of mention in the obituary or anywhere else. An inky black shadow appears in front of me, which I somehow recognize as a portal. And it is filled with static, like on an old-time 1980s black and white television set, whose antennas are not set up right. I place my right hand through. It is like jumping into ice-cold water. I am pulled in, and everything goes black. Seconds later, I find myself in a different time and place, in the basement/laundry room of my walk-up Kensington apartment on J Street. Now this is my kind of party. No, not really, Pervo. I'm being facetious. This is a Jono situation. Besides, this entire room screams setup. Way too fleeky. The crime scene looks like the set of a bizarre porno. Chains, sex toys, a whip, an empty tequila bottle, and a bejeweled cone-shaped polka dot party hat with glitter. These items are spiraled around my naked body, which is splayed out in an unnatural pose. There is a gratuitous can of whipped cream on an end table, brought to you by the set design team for Leaving Las Vegas. There are diamond-shaped imprints crisscrossing my throat. Kinky. These roughly match the links of a utility chain and master lock dangling from a pipe on the ceiling. There's the homicide detective on his cell phone by the staircase. What is he doing? Taking a coffee break? How about bagging some evidence, dude? I guess that's too much to ask. No suicide note. A flared red mini dress with sequins, fucking sequins, is hanging from an actual hanger on the back of a chair in the corner. What am I? Going to a ballet recital? And that isn't even my size. Who hangs themselves naked, by the way? Asking for a friend. What grown-ass woman wants a bunch of strangers staring at her hoo-ha and critiquing her post-mortem body? And if I'm guessing, someone would have had to have sedated me to get my clothes off without simultaneously losing their groping hands in the process. Good to see forensics is on top of things, seeing as it didn't appear that I had even been given an autopsy, let alone a post-mortem tox screen. Wouldn't want to burden toxicology with ruling out the ruthless murder of a local investigative reporter. Jesus. And here we have Exhibit A through Exhibit motherfucking Z. Forensics hasn't bothered taking any DNA off of my fingers, which are lacerated near the fingernails and probably have some kind of identifying biological evidence. But why bother with that? Taxpayer dollars and all. I certainly wasn't grasping at the chain if I did this to myself. So, query me this. Why do I have lacerations and biological matter under my fingernails? Because I was having such a good time before accidentally shuffling off the mortal coil. These brown brick buildings are so old, the entire basement is probably an asbestos dead zone. I wouldn't be caught dead in. Ha! Guess I fucked that one up. I walk to the corner of the room, where I can feel an inky black void of icy cold drawing me in. Another portal begins to shake into existence, static and all. Seconds later, I am back in McGillen's old ale house on Drury Street. The place is filled with Phillies fans dressed in jerseys and sports tees and sweatpants, swilling beer from octagonal plastic mugs and playing beer pong in the corner by the dartboard. The place smells like a fraternity basement. It's Getting Hot in Hera by Nelly is blaring a bit too loudly as most of the bargoers have their eyes fastened to the flat screens. Sitting at a table under the neon lighting near the bar is Alex. He's a friend, and he works for Congressman David Lebovitz. He's all suited up and out of place, with that annoying American flag pin on his lapel. He's our slightly douchier Barney Stinson. I'd say we love him for it, but he's suspect numero uno at the moment. Julia Denham is sitting across from him, a chirpy Asian woman who is a PR agent for various politicos around town. She is one of those annoying people who tries valiantly to tell everyone what they want to hear and gives the most annoying, try-hard vibes you've ever experienced. I overhear the two of them discussing Alex's promotion to campaign manager. Interesting. He seems a bit young for that position. And I didn't know he was a social climber. Judging by his drinking habits, I wouldn't have guessed he had so much closet ambition. I'm so happy for you, Alex. You've always been my favorite. So dashing and talented. Well done, sir. And well done is better than well said, Julia says. Here, here, Alex said, raising his mug in a token cheers. The important thing is to focus on David's military background, Julia says. Agreed. The public eats that stuff up, Alex says. Lots of pushback from the union lobbyists. We really need to lock in union support, too, Julia says. You know there have been rumors about campaign finance issues, hence Jerry being canned, Alex says. We need to silence those rumors, Julia says. I've been working on it, Alex says. This son of a bitch. Did he do it himself? All of my anger boils over and lumps up in my throat, and I look directly into that bitch's face as I scream out, "You bastard!" at the top of my lungs. You bastard, Julia says. Excuse me? Alex says. Holy shit. I've got ventriloquism abilities. I can speak through the living. Okay, focus. Amelia, you can do this. That bastard. I meant, that bastard, I say, through Julia. Interestingly, she doesn't seem to realize I'm speaking through her. You mean Amelia? Alex asks. Yes, that pesky Giorno. We need to make sure she doesn't put the congressman under the microscope or attract unnecessary media attention, I say, through Julia. I wouldn't worry about her. I hear she's a freak and has been on a drug bender lately. I'm sure she can be easily discredited if she ever even gets around to writing that hit piece, Alex says. Are you fucking serious? I say, through Julia. What? Alex says. I mean, wouldn't want to see her have an unfortunate accident, I say, through Julia. No, wouldn't want that, Alex says with a chuckle. This son of a bitch. At least I know who I'm haunting now. And I am going to haunt this bastard into extinction. You're in for a dead reckoning, Paolo. You think you are getting off scot-free on this one? Over my dead body. I distinctly remember, after about a half-dozen Jum-O shots, spilling the beans to Eddie about the scoop I had on the congressman. And Alex had been there, drinking with us that night. I'd laid it all out, given him the goods on a silver platter. How I had a source that Congressman Lebovitz had been funneling campaign funds provided by developer Gerald Bundler, a big-time party faithful, over to several local city councilmen to buy their votes on a zoning and buildings approval. Bundler needed the votes to secure zoning approvals and tax abatements for a gaudy luxury residential tower, unoriginally called the Summit, that does Zippo for Kensington, but which would make Bundler a pretty penny The two of them slam their mugs together and cheer their damnable conspiracies, and I see an inky black static portal forming over by the dartboard. I walk through two college-age kids playing beer pong. I walk the length of the table. I swat the ball away as I go, and it goes bouncing under a table in the middle of the bar. I knock over a few solo cups, too, for shits and giggles. I step through the portal. Sarah and Eddie are drinking Dunkin' Donuts coffee at the shop by my apartment, seated at cringy tables in the dingy, beat-up walk-in area, which has taken a back seat to the drive-thru, as people have been growing increasingly antisocial. Sarah is my 2-year younger sister, and Eddie, well, you know Eddie, my fellow reporter, best friend. And if I'd lived long enough, there was some underlying chemistry that had us set on a course to eventually fuck. But I guess it is up to Sarah to light that torch if she ever has the inclination. My dance card is a bit full now. What with solving my own murder, time and space portals, learning new supernatural abilities, and figuring out how to pass on to the great beyond. And I'm presently sequestered in a different realm where I can't actually directly interact with the living. So that ship has sailed. She was happy, Sarah. Really happy. I just, Eddie says, in my mental monologue, I think, really wanted to jump her bones. But that's the thing. I have a dirty mind. See her taking her life? Sarah interrupts. Yeah. No. I am not buying it. But I can't help feeling guilty. Maybe there was something I missed. Maybe she was in some kind of trouble, and I didn't see the signs, Eddie says. Maybe if I had just sacked up and made a move that night, she never would have been home alone to be drugged and framed for suicide. I'm sorry. I'll stop. My sister was stubborn to a fault. If she was going to fall on her sword, which she never would have done, you can be damned sure she'd take someone down with her. Someone evil. Someone who deserved it. She never wasted a chance to make a statement, Sarah says. Damn right, sissy. Do you know anyone who would want to do her harm? I say, through Sarah. I can't think of anyone, Eddie says. Was there like a story she was working on? Anyone that might have had cause to shut her up? I ask, through Sarah. Well, Congressman Lebovitz. She was doing a hit piece, Eddie says. And anyone know about the piece who might have, maybe, wanted to stop it? I ask, through Sarah. Only Alex, Eddie says, continuing. Holy shit. Alex was there that night, and he just got promoted to campaign manager. Oh, Eddie, you aren't just a pretty face. Good boy. Now off to make a statement. I arrive in hell. And by that, I mean the Kensington neighborhood of North Philly, above Fishtown. They call it the Badlands. Upstanding citizens are locked indoors, afraid to come outside into the drugs and crime that are ubiquitous. It stands to reason why some developer wants to plow all this away and implant a bunch of yuppies to gentrify the area. but it doesn't mean it's any substitute for cleaning up this mess. Move it out of here, it just ends up someplace else. Philly dope is a thing. $5 a bag. And the stuff is vicious. It is cut with damnation and ill intent. And that is part of the marketing. No joke. There is an open-air drug market on Kensington Avenue that rivals the Roman Forum in terms of sheer brutality. Unsanitary conditions, market domination, carnage, and bloodshed. It bears all the hallmarks of utopia, largest open-air selling market on the East Coast. By a long shot, you can straight up buy fentanyl. Over 200 deaths per year. The place should be swarming with spooks, but I'm the only one that I see. Against a landscape of row houses, abandoned factories, and vacant lots, only Camden more closely resembles Afghanistan. Across the street, there's a Chinese takeout with stock green signage, a nickel laundry that is shuttered, a check cashing joint with padlocked roll-up security doors already down at noon, and an Irish pub called Flanagan's, where people are openly selling drugs outside without even swiveling their heads to look for cops. As Alex walks below the Kensington Avenue underpass on his way to a union rally, he passes by a mattress lying on the lawn of an empty lot by the sidewalk near a bent-over red fire hydrant. He keeps his head down and walks quickly. I inhabit a bum and say, "Got any change, murderer?" Alex flinches, but doesn't break stride. As he keeps walking, I inhabit a homeless woman who is high as hell and collecting used needles to turn into prevention point for clean needles that can be sold for money. Her name is Renee. "You gonna clean up the neighborhood, Alex?" I say. Through her, he turns his head and says, "You know me. I know what you did," I say. Through her, "Jesus Christ," he says, and keeps walking. Eddie is at the rally at the Union Hall in Fishtown. Alex is standing by the congressman. Renee is in the audience. As the congressman gets on stage, Eddie confronts Alex about my death. My powers have increased, and I now possess Renee. As I approach the front of the auditorium in Renee's skin, I take the package of fentanyl out of my pocket. Eddie's face is red. Sweet boy. He has some sweat on his forehead. He is really putting Alex through his paces, laying out the evidence, providing information from the autopsy report, pointing out motive and opportunity. I taught him well. Pains me to think I won't be seeing much of him after this. As Eddie rushes off in a huff, and Alex stands there red-faced and nervous, I approach. "This is for you, you little shit," I say, through Renee, handing Alex a bag full of fentanyl. "Is this?" Alex says, "Yeah, you little pussy. If you want to take the easy way out. Detectives know what you did. Few of us pushers saw you that night, and they are coming for you," I say, through Renee. Alex looks around the room, grabs the fentanyl, and rushes out without waiting for the congressman. Alex is in his penthouse apartment. the Sterling Apartments in Center City. He sits on his microfiber couch, listless, afraid. I am there, in the corner. A hypodermic needle sits on the table, and Alex is taking the coward's way out. I watch him as he puts the tourniquet around his arm. I watch the blood pool in the fluid as he injects the chemicals into the blood. His eyes close, and his head lays back on the plush sofa cushions. I am going to embarrass him, I think, strip him naked, like he did me. But then another portal opens, warm, full of light, and pulls me in, the Spooky Boogie. Halloween is a holiday that everyone knows well, because it's the only time humans and spirits can coexist. Every year on October 31st, the dead rise from their graves and walk among us. The demons crawl out from the shadows because the holy light holds no sway, and even the monsters come out to play. At first, there was bloodshed on both sides, but it didn't take long for humans to adapt to the annual phenomenon by dressing up in silly costumes to blend in with the evil entities. And oddly enough, it worked. When bloodlust is in a demon's eyes, they fail to see the obvious. Over the years, the tradition morphed into a children's fairy tale. And these days, no one bats an eye if a spectral spook passes by. Adults took on a responsible attitude and allowed their little ones to go out and enjoy the night. Soon after, a festive event called trick-or-treating came roaring into every neighborhood around the world. Every girl and boy would get candy if they simply knocked on someone's door and said, "Trick or treat." The evil creatures paid no attention to the humans and their silly ways. They couldn't tell friend from foe when they wore the costumes, or why one of their own would knock on a stranger's door and not tear them apart. It was a farce that became institutionalized in its absurdity. To each their own. As the world grew older, so did the Halloween fairy tale. The traditional holiday of trick-or-treating morphed into a health-conscious day when adults decided that too much sugar was bad for their kids. It became a hot topic for years, but the day of righteousness came when many children became obese. In the end, the simple solution was fair and just. The little ones could still go out on Halloween night, but instead of getting candy, they would get vegetables instead. It wasn't a popular decision, but it became law and was written in stone. The evil spirits didn't care one way or the other because they floated on with their once-a-year Halloween romp, stomp, and boogie. They still couldn't tell humans from demons, but occasionally a slip-up would occur. If someone removed their costume or mask in a spirit's presence, they were torn limb from limb without a second thought. This was a rare occurrence, but an important reminder to parents and children everywhere to always wear their outfits, no matter what. In the wee hours on Lame Street, Timmy Lawson sat before his parents while his mom Amanda adjusted his vampire cape. She saw his legs thumping and asked, "Are you nervous about tonight?" Timmy widened his and replied, "No, Mom. My Dracula costume is the best on the block, and I'm ready to go." He parted his mouth slightly to show his fake vampire teeth and snarled, "Arr!" Amanda looked at her watch and bit her bottom lip. Her blonde hair hid her face, but Timmy could sense her apprehension. "I'll be fine, Mom. I know you will," Amanda said. "I'm your mother, and I'm allowed to worry." Timmy folded his arms and frowned. "Mom!" "Fine," Amanda blurted. "You better get going before it gets too late." Doves exploded in Timmy's heart, and he jumped out of his chair. "Yay!" His father, John, who was always overprotective, lowered his evening paper and warned, "Before you go, I want you to be on your best behavior. And remember, no candy or sweets." Amanda parted her golden locks and echoed, "That's right, Timmy. Only vegetables." Timmy lowered his head and slouched. "No one gives out candy anymore. It's against the law." John reached up to his clean-shaven face and removed his black glasses. "That's true, son. But in this world, there are still a lot of people out there who don't follow that law. Just remember, humans are just as bad as those monsters, and perhaps a bit worse." "Okay, Dad." Timmy didn't fully understand, but his dad was a wise man, and he'd be a fool not to listen. "Your father's right," Amanda said. "We just want you to be safe." She knelt and placed a gentle kiss on Timmy's forehead. "Now go have some fun." A bright sparkle filled Timmy's eyes, and an eruption of freedom sprang from his lungs. He grabbed his empty pumpkin bucket and raced through the front door without saying goodbye. The cool night air brushed over his skin like a masterful painter, lightly kissing the canvas with a boisterous color. Lame Street was bustling with children dressed in their favorite costumes: clowns, unicorns, beasts, and all. What an awesome night. Lame Street was a small suburban community where every house looked the same, with trimmed bushes, mowed lawns, and perfectly placed trash cans that stood next to the residential mailboxes by the sidewalk. A place where everyone drove a Prius and worked 9-to-5 jobs. Everything was routine, and that's the way they liked it. As Timmy took in the scene, he noticed that his friends were waiting for him at the end of the driveway. Alice was dressed as a ghost. Her white bed sheet, with the eyes cut out, showed a sliver of red hair, which was a dead giveaway. The werewolf was Fred. There was no mistaking that, because he had an uneven stride and often lingered behind the others to hide his anxiety. Then there was Carrie, dressed in a silky black dress with a matching pointy hat, long fake nose, and a huge brown wart stuck to her right cheek. She was a witch. "What took you so long?" Carrie asked. We've been waiting here forever." "Sorry," Timmy said, walking towards them. "My parents." "I'm gonna stop you right there, pal," Alice fired. "We all know your parents are a bag of dicks, so let's go before the night ends." The other kids are already going home. Carrie gave Timmy a wry smile as their eyes met, and he took the lead down the sidewalk. "Okay then," Timmy said, with rosy cheeks. "Let's have some fun and get as many vegetables as we can." I don't like vegetables," Fred stuttered, bringing up the rear. The first house they visited was Mr. Sullivan's, their 4th grade math teacher. Timmy knocked 3 times on his oak door, and Mr. Sullivan laughed when it swung open. "Ah, what do we have here? A witch, vampire, ghost, and a werewolf. Trick or treat, Mr. Sullivan," Carrie yelled, holding out her black plastic cauldron. Sullivan smiled and said, "Well, don't you all look so cute?" He reached around the corner and revealed a huge basket of apples. "Here you go, children. I'm afraid I'm out of veggies this evening, so these juicy apples will have to do." Timmy extended a shaky hand and swallowed deep. "My parents said only vegetables. Fruits and veggies are a heaven's delight," Sullivan groaned. "I don't see the harm as long as it's not candy." He pushed the basket further toward the kids. Alice grabbed one and quickly took a bite. The sweet juices dripped down her chin, and she smiled. "See, they're not laced with poison, so grab one and let's go." "Well, you wouldn't know right away, because the poison takes a few minutes to kill you anyway," Fred said, peering through his wolf mask. They all shared a laugh, grabbed an apple, and headed for the next house. "Thanks, Mr. Sullivan. See you back in school." "Okay, children," he said, watching them leave. "Be safe, and don't forget that quiz on Monday." The second house belonged to Jane Thatcher, leader of the neighborhood gossip group. When she answered the door, the kids saw a huge bucket filled with baby carrots. "Hello, kids. You all look nice." Alice held out her ghost bucket and watched Jane throw one baby carrot in. Plop. Alice narrowed her eyes and asked, "What happened to the big carrots we got last year?" Jane drew her lips in and took a deep breath. The kids leaned backward and flared their nostrils because her breath smelled like an ashtray. That's because she smoked a pack a day. Well, times are tough, and you can't blame an old lady for trying to save a little. "That's okay," Timmy said, holding out his pumpkin bucket. "It's better than nothing." Fred held out his wolf bucket and stepped back when he saw Jane place 3 baby carrots inside. He blinked rapidly behind his mask before noticing her ashen breath upon his brow. "There you go, sweetie. I think your costume looks the best. And everyone knows I like my men with a lot of hair." Ha, ha, ho. When he saw her yellow-stained teeth up close, Fred ran away. The others quickly followed. but they couldn't hide their laughter. "Don't forget to come back now, you hear?" Jane yelled. That was gross," Fred moaned. "Ha, ha, ha," laughed Alice. "I think she likes you." Timmy couldn't uncurl his smiling lips. "No, I think she loves you. She wants to pet your fur," Alice scoffed. "All right, guys," Carrie urged, taking off her hat. "That's enough. Fred didn't deserve that, and we have no right to make fun." Fred removed his fury gloves and shook the sweat out. He shuffled his feet, cleared his throat, and coughed. "You... I can still taste her rotten breath." Timmy removed his fake fangs and said, "Carrie's right. I'm sorry for laughing at you, but it was a little funny." "Yeah?" Alice said, lifting her bed sheet to suck in the night air. "We were just pulling your leg. We're sorry." Fred swayed from side to side and said, "It's fine. I guess it was a little funny." "You know what we need?" Alice muttered. "We need some candy. That would be awesome." "We can't have candy," Timmy said, looking at the pavement. "Besides, no one around here gives it out anyway." Carrie nodded and gave Alice a pat on the shoulder. "You're right. Getting vegetables every year sucks. And it would be nice to have some sweets." Yeah, Fred agreed. Suddenly, a deep, shallow whisper blew by the children, like a small flower floating in the air on a warm summer day. Did someone say candy? Stepping out from the nearby bushes was a small, slender man. His face was a carved pumpkin, and he wore a black top hat with a matching suit with gold trim, boots, and white pants. He held an antique lantern to light his way. The children were speechless. They had never seen a costume like his. "Who are you?" Timmy asked, breaking the silence. His eyes were fixated on the mysterious figure. "Me? I'm Mr. Spooky, silly," he said, bowing. He wobbled over and peered into their plastic buckets. "What's this? An apple? Carrots? Where are the sweet treats?" Alice placed her hands on her hips, and her sheet ruffled in the wind. "We're not allowed to have them. Where have you been hiding? Under a rock or something?" "No," Mr. Spooky said. He held up his lantern and uttered, "I've been locked away in darkness for the longest time, but I found this light, and it has guided me here." Are you a demon?" Fred asked, taking a step back. "I told you already. My name is Mr. Spooky, and there is no other." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of lollipops. "I have all the sweet treats you could ask for." Alice widened her eyes, and the sheet covering her face became moist at the mouth. "Wow," Timmy shook his head when he heard his parents' words echo. "No candy, only vegetables." The thought sent a river of snakes sliding down his side. "We're not allowed to have any candy, Mr. Spooky." "What?" Mr. Spooky shrieked. "No candy? That's absurd. Don't you know what day this is?" Carrie stepped forward and brushed Mr. Spooky's hand away. She didn't want to hear any more of his nonsense. "Look, Timmy's right. We can't have candy, no matter how much we want it. It's the law. If we break it, we'll be grounded forever. How rude, Mr. Spooky said. No child should ever be grounded. My candy will free you and make you fly like the birds in the sky. Look, man, we appreciate your offer, but we need to go now, Fred said. The children turned their backs to Mr. Spooky and left him alone with an upside-down smile. They didn't mean to hurt his feelings, but in their defense, they were trying to do the right thing. Mr. Spooky thought and thought as the children walked away. No child should ever go without sweet treats. I must change their minds. Wait! He called out. The kids stopped and turned. I have a spooktacular idea. We should do the Spooky Boogie dance. It always cheers me up. And then maybe we will have some delicious treats. Before the children could say anything, Mr. Spooky stuck out his butt and twirled around like a dancing clown. Timmy, Alice, Fred, and Carrie had a strong urge to run away. But they stood firmly and watched Mr. Spooky because he was just too darn cute. Before they knew it, he broke out into a song. Everybody twirl your body. Do the Spooky Boogie. Clap, clap, clap. Throw your hands up now. And clap, clap, clap. Stick that booty out. And clap, clap, clap. Do the Spooky Boogie. Shuffle here and shuffle there. Do the Spooky Boogie. The Spooky Boogie. Mr. Spooky's song and dance intoxified the air like a poison mist, and the children soon found themselves twirling and singing along. Their minds were like a lost ship sailing into uncharted waters. The discovery of a newfound rebellion was at hand. Within minutes, candy rained down, much to Mr. Spooky's delight. Oh, how wonderful! Sweet treats from the heavens above. Dig in now and enjoy the splendor. Timmy clenched his stomach and stiffened his jaw. No? Our parents said no, but I say yes. What good is Halloween if we can't enjoy a sweet snack? Mr. Spooky spun around and threw more candy at the children. Alice was the first child to give in to the wicked bliss. She picked up a chocolate bar and took a big bite. Oh, this is wonderful! Fred grabbed a piece of Laffy Taffy and bit into the sticky goodness. As it stretched an arm's length, he smiled and said, This is good. Carrie and Timmy held out the longest, but after seeing their friends give in, they had to sample the goods. They grabbed a peanut butter bar and crunched down. No words came, but Mr. Spooky could tell they loved it by their upward smiles. That's it, my lovelies. Eat. Eat until you've had your fill of sugary sweets. Mr. Spooky twirled and swirled like a ballerina and watched the children devour the candy like a pack of wild dogs. They were in it deep now and munched away every ounce of the candy. They ate so much that they fell to the pavement. They were plump, juicy, and ripe. Now that you've all had your fill, I suppose I shall have mine, Mr. Spooky growled, walking around their fallen bodies. You all look so delicious. Timmy rolled over and mumbled, No, you can't do this. Mr. Spooky cackled at Timmy's protest. He raised his lantern and smashed it down on his head. The impact did nothing more than shut his mouth. With another twirl, a thick plume of purple smoke filled the air, and Mr. Spooky transformed into a hideous demon. His sweet pumpkin face gave birth to devious evil that was hidden all along. He ripped his suit off to reveal a pair of old brown overalls that covered a dusty white shirt. His voice had also changed. It was deeper and more demonic. Yummy, yummy. You children are now full of sugar, just the way I like my sweet treats. Mr. Spooky reached into his overalls and pulled out 2 sharp kitchen knives that twinkled in the moonlight. Now, stay still while I cut you up to pieces. I can't eat you whole after all. Ha 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 ha. Alice still had a piece of chocolate in her mouth, and as Mr. Spooky walked towards her, knives dangling by his side, she spat out the sugary treat. He carelessly stepped into the sticky goo and fell with a thunderous thud. His blade slid in front of Timmy and Carrie, and they grabbed them with lightning speed. Fred exploded to his feet and tackled Mr. Spooky so he couldn't escape. You're not going anywhere. Even he was surprised at his newfound courage. That's right, Alice yelled, standing. The one thing about sugar is that it messes with your mind and makes you want more. Yeah, Timmy said, holding his head. And we are still hungry. What? Mr. Spooky shouted. You can't do this to me. Mr. Spooky writhed back and forth, trying to break free from Fred's grasp, but it was useless. Timmy and Carrie seized the moment, plunged their blades into Mr. Spooky's head, and cut away huge chunks of pumpkin slices. He screamed like a dying cat. Alice and Fred stuck their mouths inside his skull and drank deeply with their sticky lips. They spat out the seeds and laughed. Timmy and Carrie continued carving away until their sugar rush melted away and ate what was left. The last thing Mr. Spooky heard was someone chomping down on his skull. Later that night, the children agreed to return to Timmy's house to watch some scary movies. They promised each other that they would never talk about what had happened. When they walked through the door, Timmy's parents asked, "Did you all eat your vegetables?" In one collective voice, they said, "Yes, we did." Down under the Manhattan Bridge, Overpass, running along the streets of Lower Manhattan, crossing over Center Street, I kept an even tempo. The sky suddenly darkened as heavy clouds covered the blue sky like spilled ink clouding out over parchment paper. I could have turned back, and avoided the storm. But I needed to get my miles in. Post the numbers. Do the work. Think of that Starbucks cappuccino and the warmed-up butter croissant that's waiting for you. I had already gone 5 miles by that point, but 6 miles was my daily minimum, and I was hurting. Right calf cramping, stitch in my side, labored breathing. Count your steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Tyson is the best. Tyson can't be beat. The training was the only place where the force of my will held sway. The only thing in my control. Ever since the accident, it was even more important to stick to the plan. Keep my health intact. For without that, there was no livelihood, no finding a partner, no future family, no legacy to mark the fact I was here and alive. Without that, I was nothing but an advertising account manager in an agency. The net purpose of my life being to create desire in people's minds and associate their pre-existent needs with a brand that had the answer to their woes. It is all snake oil, really. There is no such thing, no panacea. I learned that in the hospital. I kept asking, isn't there a drug or something to reverse that? Their heads shook. No? Isn't there anything that can help with that? Help the healing process? Their heads shook. Just rest and rehab and my will. Just work and luck. As I crossed the Brooklyn Bridge, I dodged an older Ukrainian woman with a shawl and a steel utility cart filled with groceries. A bunch of kids walking along with their heads down on their phones, smoking stogies and taking drags off vape pens, and dozens of sightseers taking selfies. None of them were turning back. None of them were chastened by the storm. And I wasn't going to abandon my planned training over some weather. I needed to get in my daily 6-mile allotment. I owed it. I couldn't come up short. Everything depended on consistency, inerrancy, and discipline. I remembered laying in the hospital bed after waking up from the induced coma. I remembered rehab for the foot drop in my left foot that wouldn't flex due to the paralysis of the nerves, the damned peroneal nerve that I'd never heard of until it became my nemesis. For a while after the stroke, I couldn't see from my right peripheral and experienced a kind of pause in my thoughts during conversations. Just lost my bearings and couldn't remember what was just said. In tests at the neurologist, I couldn't repeat a simple sentence, which made it hard to carry on a conversation. That is how it goes. One day, everything is normal, and then you get struck by lightning, or in my case, a Prius. Taking my bike out to buy groceries on a Tuesday night, I got sideswiped by a Prius and suffered head trauma that resulted in a stroke. The rain came forth in a downpour. The wind cracked like the lashes of a whip, and the cold exhalation of the river pulled the heat out of the autumn air. I felt the first morning droplets, sprinkles of mist, icy tendrils. Then they came harder, steadier, coating my forehead in a glaze of salty New York City rain, all acid and recycled Hudson River sludge. Truth be told, I alternated between the carrot and the stick. I'd count steps, give myself a little rah-rah stuff, and think of my after-run meal. But I'd be lying if I didn't own up to the fact that most of it was an evil drill sergeant saying, "Who are you kidding, you worthless loser? And your life is nothing. You are nothing. You're a fucking loser. Worthless. A piece of shit. Why do you even exist?" And worse, that is the voice, which has been more persistent since the stroke. And after the stroke, there were also occasional visions and hallucinations, usually malevolent ones, fears brought to life in the form of ghouls or ghosts, scarecrows or hobgoblins, just 80s B-movie stuff mostly. Nothing truly terrifying. A few moments later, the deluge crashed over my shoulders like shower water, running down my back, a furious gush of water, and the wind hit my face, buffeting me with unrelenting blows. And the wind slapped my back, muffling the street sounds and cocooning me in the isolating cone of rumbling storm sounds. It was isolating and unpleasant, the farthest thing possible from 70 degrees and sunny. When I finally came over to the Brooklyn side of the bridge and found some city ground shielded from the wind by buildings, with sufficient overhangs to shield me from the rain, the air was cold and crisp, perfect autumn air, redolent of carpets of crunchy brown leaves crunching underfoot on the sidewalks. But I was already soaked to the bone. I made my way down into Dumbo, sailing along by buildings with Merlot-covered bricks on their faces, watching you as you go, and cobblestone streets that give back sound as you clomp along, as if they are conversing with you and warning of the things hidden in alleyways and liminal spaces amid the cityscape. I headed under the Manhattan Bridge overpass by Adams Street to where people were enjoying the cool weather at wooden picnic tables and congregating to enjoy the autumn evening. They were all dry and had arrived before the storm rolled in. Happy with themselves, no doubt, for their attention to the weather report on their iPhones. Applauded, I could not boast. I joined them and sat at a picnic table, drenched in cold rain. Steam coming off my face, my forehead, and my very breath. The rain was in my sweat-wicking t-shirt, in my Lululemon running sweatpants, and my water-resistant running shoes were squishing out water like a wrung sponge as I walked to the bench and sat down in a heap. A puddle of waterlogged defeat. An old Jamaican man directly across from me had a gray glass eye beneath drapes of dreadlocks. He was playing chess with a young black boy, school age, wearing a ball cap. There was a midget. He was a handsome fellow, square and black-haired with a side part, wearing a collared shirt and khakis, carrying himself with the deportment of a king. He was clean-faced, with a small mustache, giving just a hint of the rebel. I saw a red-haired woman in a green dress walking past. I saw a crow fly through the archway down toward Pebble Beach. It was a surreal moment, separated out of time. And then, as I sat calmly, looking about, I heard a sound. It was a chirping whistle, a piping, a chattering screech. Chwee-a-pep-a, chwee, chwee. The sound came again, haunting, melodious, distressed. Chwee-a-pep-a, chwee, chwee, oop, chwee. Then on the heels of the sound was a mocking chortle. Orb, qua, orb, 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 qua. I looked about. I looked at the red-haired woman in the green dress who had sat down and was talking to a 7-foot-tall monster, a giant, who looked like an adult sitting at the tea table outside on the back lawn of a doll's house. They went on chit-chatting without a hint of disturbance. I looked at the Jamaican man with the dreadlocks and the glass eye. He moved his rook nonchalantly across the left-hand side of the board saw, capturing a threatening bishop with a satisfied smile. I could not see the little boy's reaction, but he was a gaunt boy, malnourished, with a Yankees ball cap. I looked at the midget, who was reading a book in the light of the golden hour, facing outward on the park bench he chose, oblivious to his surroundings. Did none of them hear it? Chwee-a-pepe, chwee, chwee. Then I looked up and identified the sound. The thing that made it. It was perched, inverted, clinging with claws like meat hooks that dug deeply into the concrete of the archway, holding the sinuous body in defiance of gravity. Its coat was a brilliant golden color that shimmered like fall leaves coated in nail polish and adorned with 1,000 tiny shimmering gemstones. It glistened with a slight pink hue. Its tail was a lion's tail, through and through, a happy, wagging tail that was at least 2 feet in length, with a big pom-pom on its end. It had a spiraling circular mane from neck to shoulder blade that transitioned from white feather to golden fur, capturing all the colors of the palette in between. And its wings. They hewed closely to the torso, the muscular lion's torso, draping the sides, a gold leaf texture, reminiscent of the hammered, thin, unmistakable coating on bar ceilings from a bygone age that features the iconography of the architect's fancy in repeating patterns and frames the rooms in an unnatural glow. And the head. The head was the most haunting. An eagle's head. That regal head. The beak, with flaring nostril holes, alternating in the light between bright canary yellow and deep amber. A thing of menace, and the eyes, big and raven-like, but sad. A killer's stare. Eyes that encompass the eddies of shame mixed in with the confident assurance of death itself. The black swirl of destiny that has come to pass.
Pepe, chui, chui.
The thing sprinted along the archway to the ground like a circus motorcycle in a cage, seemingly immune to gravitational pull. Its footfalls light and quick. Impossibly light and quick. And it was off toward Pebble Beach. I sprang to my feet and ran after it, running at a high tempo, not knowing why I was giving chase. At first, I could see it ahead of me on Adams Street, heading north toward Water Street, and I picked up the pace. It ran along the sidewalk beneath some scaffolding, and then leaped upside down, running along the underside of the scaffolding like a weightless mirage. I sprinted hard, and lactic acid was pooling in my legs. We bore left on the cobblestones of Water Street, and the creature was back on the ground, pulling away from me, leaping with long, fast strides over the cobblestones. My legs grew heavy and leaden. Just past Jacques Torres Chocolate, it grew so small in the distance that it became like a lonely speck of gold. Finally, the creature reached Pebble Beach and the great glass cube over Jane's carousel, and leaped again over the velvet stanchion ropes at the entrance and perched atop the carousel frame. I finally reached the attraction and ducked inside, leaning against the glass walls of the display to catch my breath. I watched as the creature circled around the top of the carousel. The carousel started up, and strains of old-fashioned music from the band organ floated over the river, mingling with the sound of crowds passing by. Da, dun, dun, da, dun, da, da, da. The 48 hand-carved wooden horses began to rise and fall as they circled Brooklyn Bridge Park. Chui e pep e chui chui. The alien visage of this regal creature, with the head of a old eagle, vocalized its haunting call, and then regarded me, head motionless, at full height over its tucked-in and perched haunches, front legs straight, shoulders drawn back. It sat stationed on the far, ornamental exterior work beyond the moving mechanisms of the carousel, which spun beneath him. And it fixed its gaze and continued to regard me in eerie silence. Was this some apparition? A lengthy hallucination caused by my damaged neural veins? Or could this impossible vision be real? You dare to chase after me? It said, not in the voice of an ordinary man, but in a booming voice, like that of a great general. I thought it was a hallucination. I had to see if you were real. I said, "This is no dream, boy." What stands before you has the strength of a lion and the wisdom of an eagle. I am the protector of great treasures. I test men's merits and search their hearts in hopes of finding, in any of you, the nobility and courage required. It said, "Well, I guess I'd best be going back home. I was just finishing up a run. I wasn't looking for treasures or claiming nobility or anything like that," I said, beginning to walk toward the door. "Stop. Don't take another step. Are you telling me there's nothing your heart desires?" the creature asked. "Desires? Too numerous to mention. But right now, I just want my health back. A sliver of confidence, maybe," I said. That isn't much. What would you use this health for? What would you do with your courage? Run in circles? Aim for a promotion? Settle down with a girl? Is there nothing more that drives you than a hamster wheel? Some money to throw at creature comforts? And settling down? No sense of adventure? It asked. Not for nothing, but making rent in Brooklyn and starting a family in this day and age is an adventure. Let me tell you, I said. Enough, insolent little man. You see these horses on this carousel? He asked. I see them, I said. Horses are the natural enemies of us griffins, the griffin said. Why? I asked. Because horses are mindless servants that serve the will of the pure and the wicked alike. Lemmings, good-natured creatures, almost aristocratic in their complete humility and subservience, but to no end. Us griffin are creatures of purpose, and you, my friend, are giving horse vibes, the griffin said. So, what is my purpose then? I asked. A better question would be, what is the purpose? But at least you are on the right track, the griffin said. Okay, so what is that? I asked. I must be on my way now, but I will see you again, the griffin said. And it turned, and in a flash, the griffin jumped over my head, landed outside of the display, by Pebble Beach, and with long, fluid strides, like a leopard, dove onto the river and began churning across the water. Legs turning so quickly, it looked like the spinning wheels of a locomotive. The powerful wings opened, and it took flight, flapping those giant, golden, shimmering wings as it soared out of sight. I continued my run back home, churning my legs, a fire in my abdomen, heaviness in my legs, a drowsy, delayed hitch in my left leg's footfalls. And as I reached Williamsburg and was almost home, I suddenly collapsed. A light was shining in my eyes as I came to. A red-haired woman in green medical scrubs was flashing a light to test my pupils. Doctor, pupils constricting normally and dilating with the removal of the light, she said, looking down next to her. Monitor the patient for the next half hour. Order up an EKG. And let me know of any unusual speech patterns observed, the man said. The doctor was a midget. He had a commanding presence despite his small stature. As he walked out of the room, the nurse did a few more tests and then turned back to me and said, "Rest up. You'll need your strength." A few minutes later, a giant man with a huge forehead entered. He had to be 7 feet tall. He said, "I am here to put some heparin and warfarin into the IV drip. It'll just take a minute." The man placed the screw-on syringe into an input tube and pushed the drugs into my IV drip. Then he flashed a friendly smile and was off. Finally, a Jamaican man with dreadlocks and one gray glass eye walked into my room and started writing on the whiteboard on the wall in front of me. "Roger," he wrote on the board. "I'm Roge, like Rogie, and I'll be taking care of you these next few days. Just press down on that dar button if you be needing anything, and I'll be right in to sort you out. Okay?" I nodded at the man as he left, and scanning the room, I saw a little black boy in the bed next to me. He was asleep, and his head was covered with a Yankees baseball cap. He lay there completely still, in a coma, or maybe sleeping, just as gaunt and frail as they come. I had taken my EKG tests, had been wheeled around for some scans, and then brought back to my room. Exhausted, I'd passed out for a bit. After coming to from a short nap, I heard it again. Chui e pep e chui chui. Looking before me in the room, I saw the griffin. It was seated in the corner by the open window, letting in the cool October air. "What's your why?" the griffin said. "What?" I asked. "You want to get better, right?" the griffin asked. "Of course," I said. "You're going to need something a lot heavier than a Starbucks cappuccino and a croissant to put up with what this life's gonna throw at you. You're gonna need a lot more treasure to make the adventure worthwhile," the griffin said. "I don't know what that is," I said. "There will be time, my boy, to find it," the griffin said. "But are you even real?" I asked. "I am real, if you believe," the griffin said. "But what is a purpose to live for? Give me an example," I asked. "That is up to you," the griffin said. And with that, jumped through the window, calling back, "It's all up to you." And as he took flight, I felt a searing pain in my left shoulder. Chui e pep e chui chui.